Hello family, this is LaJoyce and you're here at the Joy Journey, and this is where we talk all things infertility and motherhood, trying to get you out of the mindset of being infertile into the mindset of being fruitful and joyful, enjoying your journey along the way. Today we're here to discuss a very common topic within our community, and that is low ovarian or diminished ovarian reserve, however you want to refer to it. It's something that I went through, and I know that it's something that many of you went through as well. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. I hope that you stay to the end because it's jam-packed with information that you just may need or that you can share with someone else that may need this information. Thanks for watching. Here we go. What is low or diminished ovarian reserve? Well, when we speak about this topic, it's actually referring to two qualities about our reproductive system. It's talking about the quality of our eggs, which with low ovarian reserve seems to be poor, so poor quality of eggs, and diminished reserve. So we're looking at the amount of follicles that we have left per any given cycle. So that number has subsequently diminished because of this diagnosis, and the quality of the ones that we do have is poor. So that is where we're beginning at with this diagnosis of low ovarian reserve. So how do we determine if we have this condition? Well, there's a couple of different things that usually when you see your reproductive specialist, they want to analyze in order to determine if you have low ovarian reserve. And one of these things is called FSH, and that's follicle stimulating hormone. Now, this follicle stimulating hormone is produced in the pituitary gland that's close to the brain. And the reason why it has an overproduction if someone has low ovarian reserve is because it's trying to overcompensate for an area that may seem to be lacking. So in this case, the follicle stimulating hormone believes that the follicles that we have are either poor or they're not in surplus enough. So the brain initiates a trigger to stimulate more of this actual hormone. Now, normally our levels of FSH is around 10, but those with low ovarian reserve will see that number go up. In fact, when I was diagnosed with low ovarian reserve at the age of 32, actually 33, my numbers were almost 30. My FSH was 29, and that was really scary for me. But what that meant is that for some reason, my body, my brain was signaling that there was a need to improve the egg quality or somehow try to overcompensate for the diminished quality or diminished number of eggs that I had. The interesting part about the FSH, though, is that it can fluctuate from cycle to cycle. And because of this, we don't normally depend on one lab result to determine if we actually have the diagnosis. Something now, which is a newer test in the whole slew of tests in history, a newer test that most reproductive specialists or OBGYNs are ordering along with the FSH is the AMH, and that's the anti-Mullerian hormone. And this particular hormone actually gives us information about the number of eggs that we have within any given cycle. And we all know that we're born with the amount of eggs that we're going to have, and they diminish over time as we get older. So if you think about it, the AMH really should not go up in number if we're born with the amount of eggs that we're supposed to have. So we all know that this number can improve, even though theoretically it's not supposed to. I'm a great example of that because when I started my journey of infertility, my AMH was at less than 0.016. By the time I got pregnant with my first child, the AMH was at 0.16. So it did go up. And it's interesting that we're finding that there is a correlation with vitamin D levels in AMH. So it's showing that those with low levels of vitamin D in turn may have the low AMH, and as the vitamin D levels are replenished, the AMH has shown to move up. So somehow we're seeing some type of correlation with vitamin D levels and AMH as well. So I say that to tell you that the AMH is a good indicator that something is going on. But as you further your journey, the amount that it increases may not be statistically reliable to actually base if you're going to get pregnant or not on. So all of these numbers are just markers that gives us an idea of what your body is going through so we can make the necessary changes to put us at the best possible position. So you see that AMH is not a cut and dry number to measure, and that's why we have multiple ways of measuring the ovarian reserve that you have. But on a scale, we would like to see that AMH between 1 and 2 for someone who does not have low ovarian reserve. So once you start seeing it drop below 1, that can be concerning or just cause for attention. The next form of evaluation that your provider may carry out is an ultrasound to look at the follicle count in your actual ovaries that you have at a specific point during your cycle. That will give them an idea on average of what your ovaries are releasing in order to go through the process of, pregnancy, implantation, and those things per any given cycle. Okay, so those are 3 tests that are specific to low ovarian reserve or quality of eggs that you have. There are many other tests that your doctor may run if you're going through infertility, just to kind of determine the origin and what plan of action that he or she may recommend that you take next. For instance, testosterone levels, vitamin D, estradiol, luteinizing hormone, or progesterone. So guys, why are we seeing so much more low ovarian reserve than our previous generations before us, like our grandparents and their parents, who, like I talked about in my last video, Black women and infertility, it's shown and it's proven that nowadays with our generation that we're seeing more infertility, more issues because we're starting our families much later. That kind of correlates with the reason why we're seeing more diagnoses of low ovarian reserve. So many years ago, people were starting their families and they're sometimes in their teens and stopping that whole process of growing their family at about 30. And in actuality, we are seeing that after 30 is when our ovaries start to show, diminished reserve and those types of things. So it's hard to really determine if it's because we started testing later for these things nowadays that we're showing low ovarian reserve, or if there truly was a dysfunction back then that they just never caught because they weren't having their babies and they weren't continuing their families as late in time as we are today. So it's kind of hard to determine why we're seeing it so much more now, but we do know that the delay in family building and family planning has a lot to do with that process. Okay, I'm interested to know, family. Any of you out there have family members, close family members, like your mom, your aunt, your grandmother, and you're realizing now that they may have had a diagnosis that they never were actually diagnosed with? If you're one of those people, please put a comment down below, because actually after I started going through all of this, I started asking more questions to my family members, started really analyzing what happened with my mom, because it took her 10 years between my brother and I to get pregnant again. And I realized that it was probably a high genetic link between she and I. And had I known that way in advance, I might have known what was to come, what to expect, and how to prepare a little bit better for that. So I urge you guys, if you're watching because you're not at this point, but you're preparing yourself, definitely analyze your close family members, the women in your family, their reproductive cycles, and ask questions about their journey to their children and building their families. Okay guys, there are theories of what may lead to low ovarian reserve or even premature ovarian failure. And one of those things is a syndrome called Fragile X syndrome. Fragile X automatically can cause the female to be infertile by causing premature ovarian failure altogether. Like I mentioned before, there's also definitely different genetic links that may be passed down that makes you more susceptible to low ovarian failure as well. And then also there are autoimmune disorders that can cause this issue as well. But guys, I want to mention one that a lot of you may be experiencing and may not realize that it could lead to this, and that's endometriosis. I have a little friend here for you guys. This is my little uterus here that has all kinds of silly things going on with this uterus. But endometriosis can affect so many different areas within the body, but especially within our reproductive system. And in fact, the areas that you see little dark spots, those are endometriosis spots. We call them chocolate spots, in endometriomas, those types of terminologies you've probably heard. They can be inside, outside the uterus, and then they could be here on our little ovaries. These are our ovaries here. This one's just cut open so you can see different things inside of it. These little endometriomas here that are placed on top of the ovaries can actually affect everything about this actual ovary, and in turn it will affect the quality of eggs that are developed within that ovary. So you can see that Endometriosis can do so much damage. It can cause scar tissue. I mean, there's so many things. I probably need to do just a video just on endometriosis alone. So it explains why in my 20s, my OBGYN urged me to get pregnant so quickly when she saw that I had advanced endometriosis, because she knew the damage that it could cause to my ovaries. I just wasn't aware of the actual reason behind why she wanted me to get pregnant so quickly. And lastly, if there is a history of chemotherapy or radiation or some other type of really strong cancer preventative or cancer treating drugs, medications, or therapies that you've gone through, this of course can lead to low ovarian reserve as well. How can we optimize our chances of pregnancy and get to our babies despite this diagnosis, despite being over 35, despite being over 40? How can we beat this, or at least get in the game and move towards our babies that we're destined to have? Let's talk about it. We've discussed diet a lot here on this channel. In fact, I have a whole video about fertility foods, fertility smoothies, and things that you can do to improve your chances of conceiving through your diet. But diet still is just as effective in your egg quality and your egg performance as those other things that I mentioned are. And one of them is maintaining a good level of blood sugar. So that's no extremes in like your sweets and carbs that you intake, and avoid major spikes within your blood sugar. Blood sugar abnormalities are really a huge disruptor of cell function, cell development that we kind of skip over and don't really think about. So if you're a person that has cravings and you succumb to those cravings, like every single night you're having sweet things or you're munching on a lot of carbs throughout the day, I would recommend that you maybe change that habit if you have the diagnosis of low ovarian reserve. Also with diet, I would urge that you do increase the amount of antioxidants that you include in your diet. And antioxidants also helps to restore the quality of all cells. So antioxidants is just a great way that you can take some control over that as well. If all else fails, get you some berries for antioxidants to take. And again, I've mentioned royal jelly multiple times before, but I have mentioned that because it's very important, especially with egg quality and improving egg quality. So also please consider adding royal jelly. And if you want more information about that as well, you can see the videos that I posted on the fertility diet and fertility smoothie regarding that one. I want to talk to you next about DHEA, and this is not to be confused with DHA, which is actually a supplement that's great for brain development of your child. DHEA is produced in the adrenal gland close to where your kidneys are. Low levels of DHEA are also associated with low ovarian reserve. A recent review of studies showed that those that were undergoing IVF cycles were 50% more likely to conceive than those that had not received DHA supplements prior to. In a lot of countries, DHEA cannot be sold over the counter. However, here in the United States, it can. But that tells you enough to know that this is not something that you should take haphazardly. You want your levels of testosterone to be monitored so that you can know how much DHEA you should take, and so that you can know when you should decrease or increase the amounts that you're taking. In fact, you want to be sure that you're only taking this medication under the supervision of your doctor, like your OBGYN or your reproductive specialist. But if it is advised and if you're taking it safely, this one is highly recommended. I think that it had a lot to do with what changed everything for me, with what changed my numbers and changed my prognosis and ultimately led to a baby. There are some side effects of DHEA which might be annoying, or some side effects may be more vast than others. So if you are taking it and you do notice any type of abnormal side effects, you make sure that you notify your doctor about that. And then, of course, stop taking it, notify your doctor about that. The only side effect that I did get from DHEA was abnormal hair growth, and it wasn't bad. It was just like a few hairs that would pop up here and there, and I would just pluck them out. But I felt that that was worth the benefit of having it in my system. The last change that I would suggest that I've actually done a full-fledged video on is trying holistic alternative methods to manage the blood flow within your reproductive system. And the number one thing I would say would be acupuncture. And I'll put my video on acupuncture and its benefits right here. But it has shown, guys, not only to decrease stress, and we know those that are stressed will hardly ever get pregnant. 96% of us that are stressed will not get pregnant no matter what we have going on. So we have to find ways to decrease and manage stress a little bit better. But acupuncture does that, but not only does it do that, but it does restore communication within your pituitary gland and your feedback loops so that everything can communicate effectively to regulate your hormones within your body. But it also increases blood flow to your actual uterus, your uterine lining, and to your ovaries where your little eggs are housed. And that, my friends, will lead you to better quality eggs. So you guys, next week I want to do something a little off the cuff. I know that this is a channel that we dedicate towards empowering you through the infertility journey, but I also want you guys to know me. I want you to know my story. I want you to know the essence of me, because infertility is my journey, but it's not who I am in a whole. And so if you guys have questions, any questions that you may have regarding the journey, it can be regarding the journey, regarding your journey, regarding being a mom, it could be any fashionable questions. I'm not the most fashionable forward person, but if you have any questions about something that you've seen me wear, something that you've seen me do, something that you've seen me introduce or talk about on here on this channel, it is your time to ask whatever that might be. It'll be more of a Q&A regarding your questions that I'm addressing. So guys, that is all the information today. We could go on and on and on about low ovarian reserve and all the aspects of it. I gave you kind of the top few things or top few ways to be able to make a difference yourself. Please don't forget, guys, to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can get any type of notifications when I post, and comment so that we can have a community and support each other through this time. I love what I do here, and I love that you're here, and I don't take for granted that you're spending time to listen to me on my channel today. I welcome you, I love you, and I pray that you have a wonderful rest of the week.